So were we crazy to think that we could actually achieve consensus here at this meeting? I did mention in my opening comments that we would be doing some mud wrestling, so I think that this was the mud wrestling session. But I'm thinking that, you know, when Donald Trump becomes president, he's got very, very, very good people who can solve this. We're working on it now. Believe me. So this is hard. We knew coming into this was going to be incredibly difficult, incredibly ambitious. I think that one thing we really succeeded in doing, or two things we actually succeeded in doing, was to bring you all here together to have this really, I think, a very good meeting, a very good dialogue, a very good exchange of ideas, and we still have a lot of work to do. And we knew that there would be a lot of work to do moving forward. So I just want to tell you what the plan is and the commitment that GBSI has, our steering committee has, and what we will do moving forward, because clearly we've still got a lot of work to do. There's no question about it. Here are sort of our roadmap of organizing principles. We have a lot of work to do, so organizing principle number one is that we need to continue to collaborate with sponsors to secure the kind of resources we need to complete the job. Just got to lay that out there, folks. Number two, we will issue, and I'm going to give you a timeline in a minute, a timeline slide. We're going to issue a preliminary statement, preliminary summary of the kinds of discussions and even in some cases conclusions we reached at this workshop. The workshop steering committee, some of you don't know it, but I'm going to tell you right now, steering committee, we're going to meet at dinner tonight to continue discussing a plan moving forward, and more specifically to a plan to develop a longer report, a white paper, once we achieve our validation strategy consensus that we will submit for publication. The fourth idea is to form a more focused series of antibody validation working groups. However, the number of applications we decide to bite off, all 7 or 8 or the top 4, and we will really focus in. We will bring in expertise where needed, based on some of the feedback that we got in this session. We'll continue keeping protocols, the protocols platform open so that we continue to receive additional comments both from you guys and from the community. And GBSI is going to keep this conversation going on the outside world. We're pretty good at that. We've done that before. And I think that it's really important that people know that we had this meeting and that we dug in, we rolled up our sleeves, and we're going to continue until we come up with guidelines that can be used. We heard from the journals, we heard from Jim Anderson from NIH. They're really looking to us. I mean, I think that this is a really important obligation that we have to the research community, and I think we owe it to them, to ourselves, to you all. So that's sort of the overall plan. This is sort of the timeline. Right now we're coming to the end of the Asilomar workshop. I mentioned we're going to convene these sort of subspecialized focused working groups. And by the way, those who want to volunteer, come see me after the meeting. Otherwise, we'll make assignments ourselves. We're going to finalize. Despite the robust discussion today, we're not going to give up on. I think standards are achievable. I think the question that I posed and that was discussed here is where in this continuum from conceptual pillars to super granular details do we want to be? I'll tell you where I want to be. I'll tell you, I want to be a little bit further along from pillars. I would like to also integrate a rating system. Josh, you win. You wore me down. I think that there's a lot of value to a very, very well thought rating system that can be coupled cleverly, I think, with insight to validation guidelines, where I think it could sort of find a path forward around how super granular we need to be. So I think that is something that we can take away from this meeting that perhaps we didn't come in with. So, but I think there's a lot more to think about there. And then I think I hope within 6 months we have a paper. We're ready to publish it, and all the journal editors that are here on the panel will simultaneously publish it in all your journals. Now you know why we invited you. So this is sort of the user's roadmap. We've for better or for worse, and I'm not now sure, listening to this discussion this afternoon, whether this was a good idea or not, but we have sort of thought about this in terms of what the user responsibilities are versus what the producer's responsibility are. I talked about this in my opening comments, that there are, we're all part of the problem and part of the solution. And I think there are overlapping goals and obligations that users and producers have, and I think there are unique goals and obligations that each head of the two-headed monster has. So in terms of users, I think that we talked about, and I think there was really a good discussion around training and proficiency for users, whether you're an academic lab or not. I think that there's a role here. I think there was a real receptiveness to that, and I think that if that is a reflection of what's going on in the general scientific community, then I think there's a real opportunity here. So I think that one of the things that was also discussed was actually by, I think, Vivian, was online training tools, and we've had, actually GBSI has had experience with that in the cell authentication space, which was actually funded and supported by NIH. So I think that there's a real opportunity there for training. We talked a lot about where journals play a role here. I don't want to necessarily recapitulate that, but obviously guidelines are going to play a big role here. And the same is true for NIH, and NIH is already, and funders have already established, the foundation for this through the rigor and reproducibility framework. And again, Jim said this, other people at NIH have said this directly to me. They are absolutely looking to the community, to us, to provide the guidelines. They're not going to do it. They don't see that as their role. So I think that we present them on a platter guidelines, and I think that the response will be very positive. And I think that that's going to be a really, really effective way for whatever we ultimately come up with to have an impact on the research community. Same is true for private funders, by the way. Whoops. And then producers, I think a lot of what was just said, overlaps for producers. I think that there are obviously specific issues that are unique to producers. I think, again, though, a framework for validation guidelines gives the producers a common format by which they can take these ideas. We did talk about, although not in a lot of detail, the idea of a certification program. It's something that I think we should think about very, very seriously. And I think that certainly GBSI has been thinking about that, and I think that we can continue that discussion. I think that that could really also have a very positive impact. Let's take one more vote. How many people here think that this was, in fact, a good workshop? Great. So I just want to say again, and these are sort of my final closing words, that on behalf of our steering committee, on behalf of GBSI, on behalf of our sponsors. I think this has been a great 3 days. I really do. I think it's really, we've done a lot of work, and I think despite the fact that this seems like such a complex issue, which it absolutely is, I think that we're on our way, and I think that we need to consolidate the groupthink here and move it forward. And I'm personally committed, and my organization is committed to doing that. So, thank you. So, thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. And my staff was, they're amazing. So, you should have all received an evaluation message, I believe by email before the meeting. And we do hope that you complete that, have a couple glasses of wine before you do. And we will, as I said, we will be back in touch. You're all on the hook. And this process continues. And again, it was a personal pleasure to meet many, if not all of you personally. And thank you again, and safe travels.